Well, I hope it is, and this is one of Donald Trump's great contributions to this campaign, whatever else he's doing that we all object to. He is calling out the Bush people for Orwellian, deceptive, historically amnesiac thinking, right? For Jeb Bush to say, my brother kept us safe, is not true.
I think I'm much more competent than all of them. When you talk about George Bush, I mean, say what you want, the World Trade Center came down during his time. If you look at Sandy Hook,
you can't blame George Bush for that.
He was president, okay? Don't blame him or don't blame him, but he was president. The World Trade Center came down during his reign.
He never holds back what he really thinks, does he? And as we've seen time and again, Donald Trump isn't afraid to challenge his own party or the GOP's long-held principles. Like that one about the Bush administration keeping America safe. Jeb Bush, meanwhile, as the establishment standard bearer and as a proud brother, has spent his campaign running on and not away from his brother George's national security record. Former governor tweeting in response to Trump's Bloomberg interview, quote, "We were attacked and my brother kept us safe." Trump doesn't appear to see a downside to picking this fight with the Republican establishment and their top candidate for president. Which begs the question, in a campaign year where outsiders are in the lead and the usual rules of engagement don't seem to apply, does this mean that one of the golden rules of politics over the last 15 years is now obsolete? Are we actually witnessing the end of 9/11 politics? I'm going to turn to my panel here. John, 9/11 politics has been with us very powerfully for a long time here. Is it open season on the kinds of things that Republicans campaigned successfully on before?
Well, I hope it is, and this is one of Donald Trump's great contributions to this campaign, whatever else he's doing that we all object to. He is calling out the Bush people for Orwellian, deceptive, historically amnesiac thinking, right? For Jeb Bush to say, my brother kept us safe, is not true. You know, facts are stubborn things, as other politicians have reminded us. Not only did it happen on his watch, but there was something called the Hart-Rudman report, which Senators Hart and Rudman tried to get to the White House in early 2001 to say, we are about to get attacked. They've been studying it for years. They couldn't even get in the door to meet with the National Security Advisor. These are two former United States senators. Then over the summer of 2001, Bush at Crawford, Texas, gets a report, Al-Qaeda planning attacks in the United States. They were warned. The idea that he kept us safe is not true. Okay. And just one other thing on this. That doesn't mean he was responsible for the attacks. So when the Republicans try to counterattack on this, they say, oh, you're blaming Bush. Nobody's blaming Bush. They're just saying, stop telling us he kept us safe when it's not true.
And Jane, you know Trump pretty well by this point. You won't be surprised to know that he's already been tweeting out this morning. Continuing this line, let's pull up some of these tweets this morning. He talks about Jeb Bush should stop trying to defend his brother and focus on his own shortcomings and how to fix them. Also, Rubio is hitting him hard. And then shortly after that, there was another one because he doesn't stop. Jeb, why did your brother attack and destabilize the Middle East by attacking Iraq when there were no weapons of mass destruction? Bad info? He's not going to stop going after Jeb Bush, is he?
No, and the more Jeb Bush, blusters and gets mad and turns to him on the debate stage and says he kept our country safe, the more he leaves the establishment GOP scrambling and the more he looks great. His numbers skyrocket because he is not part of the establishment. I mean, you look at the polls, government trust is at all-time lows. Right. Everyone wants anything but what we have.
Might have been Donald Trump trying to reach you, right? Amy, there weren't that many people jumping to Jeb Bush and George W. Bush's defense in this Republican field.
They're his competitors. Why would they?
But in this Republican field, does this mean that things have changed in the Republican Party in terms of the debate about George W. Bush's legacy?
I think it's moved on from George Bush's legacy. And if you remember in the Fox debate, when Jeb Bush turned to Donald Trump and said, hey, I know one thing, my brother kept this country safe, that was one of the biggest applause lines of the night. The crowd burst into cheers. The Republican Party is focusing on what are we going to do about Vladimir Putin and his rising threat in the Middle East and exercising Russian power there, and Crimea and Ukraine. What about ISIS and the ISIS metastasizing throughout the Middle East? Republicans are focused on what they see as President Obama's failures, not George Bush's.
Jane, what's next? What's he going to go after? What other sacred cows can Donald Trump go after?
Any that he can find. I mean, he's going to keep just throwing bombs as much as he can around the party and just getting people really angry because it makes him look good. And he's the political Teflon in this race.
Jeb Bush is not going to get nominated. This is my takeaway from this, is that, not just because he's down in the polls right now. Trump is going to be in this all the way, and every time Jeb Bush tries to say that his brother kept us safe, Donald Trump is going to remind voters, no, his brother not only didn't keep us safe, but he's the one that cost us $1 trillion by going to war in Iraq, which Trump was against. And if Trump had been for the war in Iraq, he wouldn't be able to make this argument. But because he was against it from the get-go, he's in a very strong position to keep Bush from being the nominee no matter what else.
Just quickly as a messaging point, I think Donald Trump, with all of this, stepped all over what was actually a very positive story for him on Friday, that CNBC backed down and that Donald Trump had the power to make the mainstream media another boo-boo-boo of the Republican Party.
Even more important than national security.
He hasn't even announced those credentials. I mean,
believe me, Republican voters were cheering Donald Trump on.
Talk about this all morning, but we have actually something really interesting coming up next.
I'm the leading state sponsor of terrorism.